My name is Martha Reed. I am 62 years old. What I am about to tell you will change the way you see the people you trust most. 3 months ago, I buried my husband of 37 years. Richard was a good man, a quiet man, the kind who fixed the sink without being asked and remembered to buy flowers every Friday, even when we had nothing left to celebrate. Our house smelled like coffee in the mornings and lavender at night. I kept fresh sheets on the bed and dinner warm on the stove. We had built a life together, brick by brick, year by year. 2 sons, a small garden, a modest savings account that Richard had worked himself gray to fill. When he died, the world stopped making sense. It was sudden, a heart attack in the middle of the night. One moment he was breathing beside me, and the next, he was gone. I remember holding his hand in the hospital, feeling the warmth leave his fingers. The boys came quickly. Daniel, my oldest, took charge of everything. He spoke to the doctors, arranged the funeral, handled the paperwork. Michael, my youngest, stayed close to me, holding my shoulders while I cried. They were good sons. I raised them to be kind, to be strong, to protect their mother. After the funeral, the house became too quiet. Every corner held a memory. His reading glasses on the nightstand, his jacket still hanging by the door. I could not bring myself to move anything. The boys visited often, but I could see the worry in their eyes. They thought I was falling apart. Maybe I was. Then, one afternoon in late September, Daniel and Michael came to the house together. They sat me down at the kitchen table, the same table where we had shared 1,000 meals as a family. Daniel held my hand. Michael poured me tea. They told me I needed a break, a change of scenery. They had arranged everything, they said. A trip to visit my sister in Portland. 2 weeks away from the memories, away from the grief. They had already bought the ticket. They had already packed my bag. I did not want to go. But when I looked into their faces, I saw Richard. I saw the care, the love. How could I say no to my own children? So I agreed. The morning I left, they drove me to the airport. Daniel carried my suitcase. Michael walked beside me, his arm around my shoulders. At the gate, they both hugged me tight. Daniel whispered in my ear, "Take care of yourself, Mom. We love you." Michael kissed my forehead. I watched them walk away, 2 grown men who still needed their mother, and I felt grateful. Grateful that even in my darkest hour, I was not alone. The flight was scheduled to leave at noon. I found my seat by the window, tucked my purse under the seat in front of me, and closed my eyes. The plane was half empty. A businessman sat across the aisle, typing furiously on his laptop. A young woman with headphones sat 2 rows ahead. I felt small in that big metal bird, suspended between the life I had known and the life I was supposed to start healing into. Just as the flight attendant began the safety instructions, my phone buzzed. A text message from a number I did not recognize. I opened it. The words on the screen made my blood run cold. "Do not drink anything. Do not fall asleep." My hands started to shake. I looked around the cabin, searching for a face, a sign, anything that would explain this. But everyone looked normal, ordinary, unaware. I stared at the message again, my heart pounding in my chest. Who sent this? Why? And then a second message appeared. "Your life depends on it." But that night, something happened that changed everything. I sat frozen in my seat, staring at those 2 messages as the plane began to taxi down the runway. My first instinct was to call Daniel, or Michael, to tell them about this strange warning. But something stopped me, a feeling I could not name. A whisper in the back of my mind that said, "Wait, think first. Who would send me such a message? And why now, on this flight?" I looked at the number again. It was local, from my area code, but I did not recognize it. No name attached, just digits and those terrifying words. The plane lifted off the ground and I felt my stomach drop, not from the altitude, but from fear. I gripped the armrests and forced myself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way Richard used to remind me when I got anxious. The flight attendant came down the aisle with her cart, offering drinks and snacks. She stopped at my row, smiling that professional smile they all have. "Can I get you anything, ma'am? Water? Juice? We have coffee and tea as well." I looked at her face. She seemed kind, normal, but the message had said, "Do not drink anything." "No, thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded and moved on. I watched her serve the businessman across the aisle. He took a bottle of water and a small bag of pretzels. The young woman ahead of me accepted a ginger ale. Everyone else on the plane seemed perfectly comfortable, perfectly safe. Yet here I was, clutching my phone like it held the secrets of the universe. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, a wrong number, some prank or misunderstanding. But deep in my gut, I knew better. Mothers know. We develop an instinct after years of protecting our children, of sensing danger before it arrives. And that instinct was screaming at me now. I decided to stay awake, to stay alert. The flight was supposed to last 3 hours and 40 minutes. I had never been good at staying awake on planes. The hum of the engines, the gentle vibration, the enclosed space, it all made me drowsy. But this time, I would fight it. I would keep my eyes open, no matter what. I pulled out a magazine from the seat pocket in front of me, some glossy thing about home decor and recipes. I flipped through the pages without reading, just to keep my hands busy. But my mind was racing. Who sent that message? What did they know that I did not? An hour passed, then another. The cabin lights dimmed as the sun began to set outside the window. Most passengers dozed off or buried themselves in books and screens. The flight attendants disappeared into the galley. The plane became a cocoon of silence, interrupted only by the occasional cough or the rustle of a blanket. My eyelids grew heavy. I pinched my arm to stay alert. I counted the rows of seats. I recited the names of my grandchildren in my head, even though I did not have any yet, anything to keep from drifting off. Then, around the 2-hour mark, I noticed something. The businessman across the aisle, the one who had taken the water, was slumped in his seat. His head tilted back, his mouth slightly open. He looked deeply asleep, too deeply. His laptop had slid off his lap and onto the floor, but he had not moved to pick it up. I watched him for a moment, unease crawling up my spine. Then I looked at the young woman 2 rows ahead. She too was asleep, her headphones still on, her head resting against the window at an awkward angle. In fact, as I scanned the cabin, I realized that almost everyone was asleep, not just resting, not just napping, but unconscious, as if someone had flipped a switch and turned off the entire plane. Everyone except me. My heart began to race. I gripped my phone tighter, reading the message again. Do not drink anything. Do not fall asleep. Whoever sent this had known. They had known something would happen on this flight, something that would put everyone to sleep. But why? And what came next? I unbuckled my seatbelt as quietly as I could and leaned into the aisle, looking toward the front of the plane. The cockpit door was closed. The galley was empty. No flight attendants in sight. I sat back down, my mind spinning with possibilities. Was there something in the drinks? In the air? Had I been targeted, or had I been warned? And then, the most chilling thought of all settled over me like ice water. My sons had booked this flight. They had insisted I take it. They had packed my bag, chosen my seat, driven me to the airport. What if they knew? No. I pushed the thought away. That was insane. Daniel and Michael loved me. They were good boys. They would never hurt me. But the message had come just as I boarded, and now everyone around me was unconscious. I pressed my back against the seat and closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to think, to remember, to search for any sign, any clue I might have missed. And that is when I heard it. Footsteps, coming from the front of the plane, slow, deliberate, moving toward me. I opened my eyes and turned my head slowly toward the sound. A flight attendant emerged from the galley, but it was not the same woman who had offered me drinks earlier. This one was younger, with dark hair pulled back tight and a face I did not recognize. She walked down the aisle with a small silver tray in her hands, checking each row as she passed. I forced myself to look relaxed, to appear asleep like everyone else. I let my head tilt to the side and kept my breathing steady, watching her through barely open eyes. She stopped at the businessman's row, leaned over him, checked his pulse at his wrist. Then she moved to the young woman ahead of me, did the same thing, methodical, clinical, as if she were a nurse making rounds, not a flight attendant serving passengers. My pulse thundered in my ears. She was getting closer. I closed my eyes completely and went limp, letting my body sink into the seat the way I imagined an unconscious person would. I kept my breathing slow and deep, in and out, in and out. I heard her footsteps stop right beside me. I felt her presence, the rustle of her uniform, the faint scent of antiseptic, not perfume. She stood there for what felt like an eternity. I could sense her looking at me, studying me. Then I felt her fingers on my wrist, cold, firm, checking my pulse. My heart was racing, and I knew she could feel it. But I did not move, did not flinch. I kept my face slack, my body still. After a moment, she let go. I heard her steps continue down the aisle, moving toward the back of the plane. I waited until the sound faded completely before I dared to open my eyes again. She was gone. I exhaled slowly, my whole body trembling. What was happening? Who was this woman? And why was she checking on unconscious passengers like we were test subjects in some kind of experiment? I looked out the window. Below, I could see nothing but darkness and scattered lights. We were somewhere over the middle of the country, suspended in the void between where I had been and where I was supposed to go. I pulled out my phone again, my hands shaking. I wanted to call someone, anyone. But who? The police? And tell them what? That everyone on my flight was asleep and a strange flight attendant had checked my pulse? They would think I was hysterical, a grieving widow imagining threats where there were none. I looked at the mysterious message again. Do not drink anything. Do not fall asleep. Your life depends on it. Someone out there knew what was happening. Someone was trying to protect me. I opened my text messages and typed a reply with trembling fingers. Who are you? What is happening? I hit send and waited, staring at the screen. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. No response. I wanted to scream, to shake someone awake, to demand answers, but I knew that would be a mistake. If I revealed that I was conscious, that I had not fallen asleep like the others, whoever was behind this would know. And then what? So I sat there in the dark, surrounded by sleeping strangers, and I did the only thing I could do. I thought about my life, about Richard, about our boys. Daniel had always been the responsible one. Even as a child, he took care of his younger brother, made sure Michael did his homework, walked him to school. After Richard died, Daniel stepped into his father's shoes without hesitation. He handled the funeral arrangements, the insurance papers, the endless phone calls. He had even helped me sort through Richard's things, a task I could not bear to do alone. Michael was softer, more emotional. He had cried openly at the funeral, holding my hand while Daniel stood stoic and strong. Michael had stayed with me for a week after Richard passed, sleeping in his old childhood bedroom, making sure I ate, making sure I did not sink too deep into the darkness. They were good boys. I had raised them to be good men. But now, sitting on this plane, with everyone around me unconscious and a stranger checking pulses in the dark, I could not stop the doubt from creeping in. They had insisted I take this trip. They had booked this specific flight. They had been so certain, so persuasive. And I, in my grief, had not questioned them. What if I had been wrong to trust so easily? I shook my head, trying to clear the thought. No, I was being paranoid. Grief does that to a person. It twists your mind, makes you see shadows where there is only light. But then I remembered something. 2 weeks after Richard died, I had gone to the bank to access our joint account. I needed to pay some bills, to handle some expenses. The teller had looked at me strangely and asked me to wait. A manager came out, a man I had never seen before, and took me into a private office. He told me there had been unusual activity on the account. Large withdrawals, transfers to accounts I did not recognize. I had been shocked. Richard and I had always been careful with money. We did not make large purchases without discussing them first. We certainly did not transfer funds to strangers. The manager had asked if I had authorized these transactions. I said no. He asked if anyone else had access to the account. I told him only Richard, and Richard was dead. He had given me a strange look then, sympathetic, but also cautious. He said he would investigate and get back to me, but he never did. And when I asked Daniel about it later, he had brushed it off, said it was probably just bank errors, things that happened when someone passed away. He told me not to worry, that he would handle it. I had believed him, trusted him. But now, 30,000 feet in the air, with everyone around me unconscious, I wondered if I should have asked more questions. The plane shuddered slightly, hitting a patch of turbulence. I gripped the armrest and looked out the window again. And that is when I saw the lights below shift. We were descending, but we were not supposed to land for another hour. The descent was gentle at first, so gentle that if I had been asleep like everyone else, I might not have noticed. But I was awake, alert, and I felt every shift in altitude, every change in the engine's hum. I looked at my watch. We had been in the air for just over 2 hours. We should have had at least another hour and a half before landing in Portland. But the nose of the plane was angled downward, and through the window I could see lights growing brighter, closer. We were landing somewhere, but not where we were supposed to. My throat tightened. I wanted to press the call button, to demand an explanation from someone, anyone. But the cabin was still silent, still dark, and that flight attendant, the one who had checked pulses like a doctor in a morgue, had not returned. I unbuckled my seatbelt again and stood up, my legs unsteady. The plane tilted slightly as it descended, and I grabbed the seat in front of me to keep my balance. I needed to see what was happening, needed to understand. I moved carefully down the aisle toward the front of the plane, stepping over the businessman's fallen laptop, past rows of sleeping passengers whose heads lolled against windows and headrests. They looked peaceful, innocent, unaware that something was terribly wrong. When I reached the galley, I stopped and listened. I could hear voices, low, muffled, coming from behind the cockpit door. I pressed myself against the wall and strained to hear. A man's voice, deep, calm. "Everything is on schedule. All passengers are down. We will be on the ground in 15 minutes. A woman's voice responded. The dark-haired flight attendant. "What about the woman in 12A? Her pulse was elevated. I think she might be awake." My blood turned to ice. 12A, my seat. "Did she move?" the man asked. "No, but her heart rate was too fast for someone unconscious." A pause. Then the man spoke again, his voice colder now. "We will deal with her on the ground. Do not approach her again. If she is awake, we do not want her to panic and cause a scene before we land." "Understood." I backed away from the cockpit door, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. They knew. They suspected. And whatever they had planned for me, it would happen once we landed. I stumbled back to my seat, my mind racing. I had to get off this plane. I had to survive. But how? The doors were locked. The pilots were in on it. The flight attendant was watching. And everyone else was unconscious. I sat down and pulled out my phone again, my fingers trembling so badly I could barely type. "They know I'm awake. Plane is landing early. Please help me." I sent the message to the unknown number and waited, my eyes locked on the screen. This time, the reply came quickly. "Stay calm. When the plane lands, do not get off. Hide in the lavatory at the back. Lock the door. Wait for my signal." Hide in the lavatory? For how long? And what signal? None of this made sense, but I had no other choice. Whoever sent these messages had been right so far. They had warned me not to drink, not to sleep, and because I had listened, I was still awake, still alive. I looked toward the back of the plane. There were 2 lavatories at the rear, both with their vacant signs illuminated in green. If I could make it there before we landed, before they came for me, maybe I had a chance. But first, I needed answers. I needed to understand what was happening and why. I opened my phone's contacts and scrolled to Daniel's name. My finger hovered over the call button. Part of me wanted to hear his voice, to have him tell me this was all a terrible mistake, that he had no idea what was happening. But another part of me, the part that had been growing louder since I boarded this plane, whispered a darker truth. Daniel had booked this flight. Daniel had insisted I go. Daniel had handled everything after Richard died. The funeral, the finances, the bank account with the strange withdrawals. What if Daniel was not protecting me? What if he was part of this? I thought back to the days after Richard's death, how quickly Daniel had taken control, how he had discouraged me from looking too closely at the paperwork, from asking too many questions. "Just focus on healing, Mom," he had said. "Let me take care of everything." And I had, because I was drowning in grief, and he was my son, and I trusted him. But now I remembered other things, small things I had dismissed at the time. The way Daniel had insisted on being the executor of Richard's will, even though Richard had wanted me to handle it. The way he had taken Richard's computer and said he would erase personal files to protect our privacy. the way he had avoided my eyes when I asked about the bank account. And then there was the life insurance. Richard had a policy. A large one. $500,000. It was supposed to go to me. But when I asked Daniel about it, he said there were complications, that it would take time to process, that I should not worry. I had not thought much of it then. Insurance companies were slow. That was normal. But what if it was not normal? What if Daniel had found a way to redirect that money? What if he needed me gone to claim it? The plane dropped lower, and my stomach lurched. Through the window, I could see we were approaching a small airstrip. Not a major airport, no terminals, no lights, just a dark runway in the middle of nowhere. This was not Portland. This was not where I was supposed to be. I stood up, my decision made. I could not call Daniel, could not trust him. Not yet, not until I knew the truth. I grabbed my purse and moved quickly toward the back of the plane. The cabin was still dark, still silent. The sleeping passengers did not stir. I reached the rear lavatory and slipped inside, locking the door behind me. The space was tiny, barely room to turn around, but it was safe, for now. I sat on the closed toilet seat and clutched my phone, waiting. The plane's wheels touched the ground with a hard jolt, and I heard the engines roar as the pilots reversed thrust. We were slowing down, coming to a stop, and then, from somewhere outside the lavatory, I heard footsteps again. Multiple sets this time, coming closer. I pressed my ear against the lavatory door, barely breathing. The footsteps were deliberate, methodical, moving through the cabin, checking rows, searching. A man's voice, the same one I had heard from the cockpit, called out. "She is not in her seat." The dark-haired flight attendant responded, closer now. "She must be hiding. Check the lavatories." My heart stopped. I looked around the tiny space, searching for options. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Just 4 walls, a mirror, and a locked door that would not hold against anyone determined to get in. I heard them moving down the aisle, opening overhead bins, checking under seats, getting closer. My phone buzzed in my hand, and I nearly dropped it. A new message. "Do not make a sound. Help is coming. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I had to stay hidden for 10 minutes, but they were right outside now. I could hear the woman's voice just beyond the door. "Check the back lavatories." I heard a handle rattle. The lavatory across from mine. The door opened and closed. Then footsteps approached my door. I held my breath and pressed myself against the far wall as if I could disappear into the plastic panels. The handle turned. Locked. A knock. Sharp, insistent. "Ma'am, you need to come out. The plane has landed. All passengers must disembark." I did not answer, did not move. Another knock. Harder this time. "Ma'am, I know you are in there. Please open the door." Silence. I counted the seconds in my head. 1, 2, 3. Then I heard the man's voice, low and commanding. "We do not have time for this. Break it down." Something heavy slammed against the door. The whole lavatory shook. I stumbled backward, gripping the sink to keep from falling. Another slam. The lock rattled but held. I fumbled with my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely see the screen. I typed desperately to the unknown number. "They're breaking down the door." "I don't have 10 minutes. The reply came instantly. "Flush the toilet 3 times. Now." I did not understand, but I did not question. I reached over and pressed the flush button. Once. Twice. 3 times. The loud whoosh of the aircraft toilet filled the tiny space. And then something remarkable happened. I heard shouting from outside. Not at my door, but from the front of the plane. Male voices. Authoritative. "Federal agents, nobody move! Put your hands where we can see them." The pounding on my door stopped. I heard footsteps running, scuffling, more shouting, the sounds of a struggle. I stood frozen, my hand still on the flush button, my mind trying to process what was happening. After what felt like an eternity, there was a gentle knock on my door, different from before, softer. A woman's voice, calm and professional. "Mrs. Reed, my name is Agent Sarah Collins with the FBI. You are safe now. You can come out." I did not move, could not move. How did I know this was real? How did I know this was not another trap? "Mrs. Reed, I know you are frightened, but I need you to trust me. The people who tried to hurt you are in custody. You are safe. Please, open the door. Something in her voice steadied me. Or perhaps I was simply too exhausted to be afraid anymore. I unlocked the door with trembling fingers and pulled it open. A woman in a dark suit stood in the aisle, her badge held up for me to see. Behind her, I could see the dark-haired flight attendant in handcuffs, being led away by two men in FBI windbreakers. The pilot and co-pilot were also in custody, their faces pale and shocked. Agent Collins looked at me with kind eyes. You did well, Mrs. Reed. You stayed alive. That took courage. My legs gave out, and she caught me before I fell. She helped me to a seat and handed me a bottle of water. It is safe to drink now, she said gently. I promise. I took a small sip, my throat dry as sand. I do not understand, I whispered. What is happening? Why would anyone want to hurt me? Agent Collins sat down across from me. We have been investigating your son Daniel for 6 months. Financial fraud. Identity theft. He stole over $800,000 from elderly clients at his firm. When your husband died, Daniel saw an opportunity. Your husband's life insurance. Your joint savings. Your house. He planned to have you declared mentally incompetent or, if that failed, to stage an accident that would eliminate you and make him the sole heir to everything you and your husband built. The words hit me like physical blows. Daniel, my son, the boy I had raised, the man I had trusted with everything. This flight was supposed to go down, Agent Collins continued. A mechanical failure, they would call it. Everyone on board would perish. A tragic accident. No survivors. No questions. I felt bile rise in my throat. The other passengers, I managed to say. Are they? They are fine. Sedated, but unharmed. We will wake them safely once we have secured the scene. They will never know how close they came. But how did you know? How did you warn me? Agent Collins smiled slightly. Your younger son, Michael. He came to us 3 weeks ago. He had been suspicious of Daniel's behavior after your husband's death. He found documents, wire transfers, emails. He realized Daniel was planning something terrible, but he did not know what or when. When Daniel bought you that plane ticket, Michael contacted us immediately. We have been monitoring Daniel ever since. When we discovered what he had planned for this flight, we had to act quickly. We could not cancel the flight without tipping Daniel off and losing our chance to arrest everyone involved. So we sent you that message. We hoped you would trust it. Trust us. Michael. My sweet, sensitive Michael. He had saved my life. Where is he? I asked, my voice breaking. Where is Michael? He is waiting for you. We have a car ready to take you to him. I started to cry then. Not tears of fear or grief, but of relief, of gratitude, of love for the son who had seen the darkness and fought to protect me. Agent Collins helped me to my feet and guided me off the plane. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Red and blue lights flashed from a dozen law enforcement vehicles surrounding the small airstrip. And there, standing beside one of the cars, was Michael. He saw me and ran, his arms outstretched. I met him halfway, and we held each other tightly, two survivors of a storm neither of us had seen coming. I am so sorry, Mom. He sobbed into my shoulder. I am so sorry I did not see it sooner. I should have protected you better. I pulled back and looked into his face. My beautiful boy. You saved me, I said. You saved my life. But even as I held him, even as relief flooded through me, a darker question burned in my mind. Daniel had been willing to kill me. His own mother. For money. How had I raised a son capable of such evil? They took me to a hotel near the airstrip. A safe place, Agent Collins said, while they processed the scene and built their case. Michael stayed with me the entire time, never leaving my side, as if he were afraid I might disappear if he looked away for even a moment. We sat in a plain room with beige walls and fluorescent lights. Agent Collins brought us coffee and sandwiches, though I could not eat. My stomach was still twisted in knots, my mind unable to grasp the enormity of what had almost happened. Agent Collins sat across from us, a folder in her hands. Mrs. Reed, I need to ask you some questions. I know this is difficult, but the more information we have, the stronger our case will be. I nodded, though I was not sure I had any answers to give. When did you first notice changes in Daniel's behavior? She asked. I thought back, trying to pinpoint a moment, a shift. But the truth was, I had been so consumed by grief after Richard died that I had not noticed much of anything. The world had become a blur of casseroles and condolence cards and sleepless nights. "I do not know," I admitted. After Richard passed, Daniel took charge of everything. I thought he was being helpful, being a good son. Michael spoke up then, his voice quiet but firm. "It started before Dad died, Mom. You just did not see it." I turned to him, surprised. "What do you mean?" He looked down at his hands, shame clouding his features. "I should have told you sooner. I should have said something, but I did not want to believe it myself." "Tell me now," I said gently. Michael took a deep breath. "About a year ago, Daniel started asking me strange questions about Dad's health, about his life insurance policy, about what would happen to the house if something happened to both of you. At first, I thought he was just being practical, planning ahead. But then he started asking about your mental state, whether you were forgetting things, whether you seemed confused." My heart clenched. I was not confused. I have never been confused. "I know, Mom. I told him that, but he kept pushing. He said it would be easier for everyone if you had someone managing your affairs, someone who could make decisions for you." Agent Collins leaned forward. "Daniel was laying the groundwork. If he could have you declared incompetent, he could take control of your finances legally. No need for violence, no need for risk, but you were too sharp, Mrs. Reed, too independent. So he needed another plan." I felt sick. "When Richard had his heart attack, did Daniel—" "No," Agent Collins said quickly. "Your husband's death was natural. We investigated that thoroughly. Daniel did not cause it, but he certainly took advantage of it." Michael's voice cracked. "After Dad died, Daniel changed. He became obsessed with money, with the insurance payout, with the house. He told me Dad had debts I did not know about, that we might lose everything if we were not careful. He said he was protecting you, protecting all of us. But that was a lie," I whispered. "Yes." "I started to suspect something was wrong when he told me not to visit you as often. He said you needed space to grieve, that too many people around you were making things worse. But when I came anyway, when I saw how lonely you were, I knew he was trying to isolate you." I remembered those weeks after the funeral, how Daniel had discouraged visitors, how he had told friends and neighbors that I needed quiet, that I was fragile. I had thought he was protecting me from pity and empty platitudes, but he had been cutting me off, making sure no one would notice if I disappeared. Agent Collins opened her folder and pulled out a document. "We found this in Daniel's home office, a forged will, supposedly signed by your husband 3 days before he died, leaving everything to Daniel." I stared at the paper she handed me. Richard's signature looked perfect, but Richard had been at work 3 days before he died. He had not been home to sign anything. "Daniel is a skilled forger," Agent Collins explained. "He learned it as part of his fraud scheme. He has been creating fake documents for years, stealing from clients, covering his tracks. But he got greedy. He started taking bigger risks. And when your husband died, he saw his biggest opportunity yet." "How much?" I asked, my voice hollow. How much was I worth to him? Agent Collins hesitated, then spoke gently. "Your husband's life insurance, your savings, the house, your pension, all together just over $1.2 million. $1.2 million. The sum of a lifetime of work, of sacrifice, of love." Richard and I had lived modestly, saved carefully, planned for a quiet retirement. We had never been wealthy, but we had been comfortable, and Daniel had been willing to kill me for it. "There is more," Michael said quietly. Agent Collins showed me the plan. Daniel was not working alone. I looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "The pilot, the flight attendant, the man in the cockpit. They were all hired by Daniel, criminals he met through his fraud network. They were supposed to crash the plane in a remote area, make it look like mechanical failure. Everyone would die, including you. Daniel would play the grieving son, collect the insurance, sell the house, and disappear with the money. I felt as though I were falling, tumbling through space with nothing to hold on to. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would he do this? I am his mother. I gave him everything. I loved him." Agent Collins spoke carefully, as if weighing each word. "Mrs. Reed, from what we have learned, Daniel has a gambling addiction. He has been losing money for years. He owes dangerous people hundreds of thousands of dollars. He was desperate. And desperate people do terrible things. Gambling. I had not known, had never suspected. When had it started? How had I missed it? But even as I asked myself these questions, I knew the answer. I had missed it because I had not wanted to see it. Because mothers do not want to believe their children are capable of evil. We make excuses. We look away. We tell ourselves that love is enough to save them. But sometimes, love is not enough. Michael took my hand. Mom, I know this is hard, but you need to understand something. This is not your fault. You did not create this. You did not fail as a mother. But had I not? Somewhere along the way, I had raised a son who valued money more than life. More than his own mother's life. Where had I gone wrong? Agent Collins closed her folder. Mrs. Reed, Daniel will be arrested tonight. He is waiting at your house, expecting to hear that the plane went down. Instead, he will be met by federal agents. He will face charges for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, forgery, and a dozen other crimes. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. The rest of his life. My son, in prison. I should have felt relief, justice, safety, but all I felt was a hollow ache in my chest where love used to live. Can I see him? I asked. Before they take him away? Michael squeezed my hand. Mom, are you sure? I need to look him in the eye, I said. I need to understand. Agent Collins nodded slowly. I can arrange that. But Mrs. Reed, I must warn you. People like Daniel rarely show remorse. You may not get the answers you are looking for. I need to try, I said. Because even after everything, even knowing what he had planned, a part of me still loved him. Still remembered the little boy who had held my hand crossing the street, who had brought me dandelions from the yard, who had called me Mama. I needed to know when that boy had died, and who had killed him. They brought me to my own house 3 hours later, the place where I had lived for 37 years, where I had raised my children, where Richard and I had built our life together, one ordinary day at a time. Police cars lined the street, their lights turned off to avoid drawing attention from the neighbors. Agent Collins walked beside me, Michael on my other side. As we approached the front door, I could see shadows moving inside through the curtained windows. Daniel was in there, waiting. Agent Collins stopped me at the door. We have already arrested him. He has been read his rights. He knows what is happening. But Mrs. Reed, you do not have to do this. You do not owe him anything. I know, I said, but I need to. She nodded and opened the door. The living room looked exactly as I had left it that morning. Richard's reading chair by the window, the family photos on the mantel, the coffee table where we had played board games when the boys were small. Everything familiar, everything a lie. Daniel sat on the sofa, his hands cuffed in front of him. 2 agents stood nearby watching him. When he saw me, his expression did not change. No shame, no fear, just a cold, calculating stare. I walked slowly toward him, my legs unsteady. Michael stayed close, his hand on my elbow, ready to catch me if I fell. I stood in front of my son and looked into his eyes, searching for something. Anything. A flicker of remorse, a trace of the boy I had loved. But there was nothing. Daniel, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Why? He leaned back against the sofa, as relaxed as if we were discussing the weather. Why do you think, Mother? Money. What else is there? The casual cruelty of his words took my breath away. I am your mother. I gave birth to you. I raised you. I loved you. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. And what did that love get me? A childhood in a cramped house with a father who worked himself to death for pennies and a mother who thought happiness meant clipping coupons and buying day-old bread. You taught me to be small, Mother, to accept less, to be grateful for scraps. We gave you everything we had, I said, tears streaming down my face. We sacrificed so you could have a better life. Sacrifice, he spat the word like poison. That is all you ever talked about. Sacrifice and gratitude and being content with nothing. Well, I wanted more. I deserved more. So you decided to kill me for it? He shrugged. It was just business, Mother. Nothing personal. You were going to die eventually anyway. I just needed to speed up the timeline. I felt Michael tense beside me, his fists clenched, but I put my hand on his arm, holding him back. When did you become this person? I asked Daniel. When did money become more important than life? For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not remorse, but anger. You really want to know? Fine, I will tell you. It started when I was 15. Do you remember when I got accepted to that private school? The one with the scholarship? I nodded. Of course I remembered. It had been such a proud moment. You and Dad said we could not afford the additional fees. That public school was good enough, but it was not good enough, Mother. I had to watch kids my age drive cars you could not afford in a lifetime. I had to pretend I did not care that my clothes came from thrift stores while theirs came from boutiques. I learned very quickly that in this world, money is the only thing that matters. That is not true, I said. Love matters. Family matters. He laughed again, crueler this time. Family? You mean the family that let me struggle while Dad hoarded every penny for retirement? You had money, Mother. You just refused to spend it. Dad's insurance policy? That has been sitting there for 20 years. Over $500,000 that could have sent me to a good college, could have given me opportunities. But no, it was for your retirement, your security. What about mine? That money was for our future, I said. For emergencies, for when we could no longer work. Well, congratulations, you saved it. And now I was going to take it. All of it. Because I earned it. I suffered through your poverty mindset for 18 years. I deserve compensation. The words hit me like stones. This was not my son. This was a stranger wearing his face. You did not just want the money, I said, a terrible realization dawning. You wanted me to suffer. You wanted me to know before I died that my own son hated me. He met my eyes, and for a moment, I saw something raw there, something true. I wanted you to understand what it feels like to have nothing, to lose everything. The way I lost my childhood to your poverty. The way I lost opportunities because you were too scared to take risks. So, this was revenge. This was justice. I stood there, looking at the man I had carried in my womb, nursed at my breast, rocked to sleep 1,000 nights. And I realized that Agent Collins had been right. I would not get the answers I was looking for, because there were no answers. Just a broken soul who had chosen darkness over light. I forgive you, I said quietly. Daniel's expression twisted into something ugly. I do not want your forgiveness. I know, but I am giving it anyway, because that is what mothers do. We love even when it is not deserved. We forgive even when it is not earned. He looked away, his jaw clenched. I turned to Agent Collins. I am ready to leave now. As I walked toward the door, Daniel called out behind me. You think you have won, Mother? You think this is over? You have no idea what I have done, what I have set in motion. I stopped, my hand on the doorframe. What are you talking about? He smiled then, a terrible, triumphant smile. Ask Michael about the life insurance beneficiary. Ask him who Dad really left the money to. I turned slowly to look at my younger son. Michael's face had gone pale, his eyes wide. Michael? I said, my voice trembling. What is he talking about? But before Michael could answer, Daniel laughed one last time. You trusted the wrong son, Mother. You always did. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Michael. His face was ashen, his hands trembling at his sides. Michael, I said again, my voice breaking. Tell me he is lying. Please. Michael's eyes met mine, and in them I saw something that terrified me more than anything Daniel had done. I saw guilt. Mom, I can explain, he whispered. My legs gave out. Agent Collins caught me and helped me into a chair. My world was spinning. First Daniel, now Michael, both of my sons. Everything I had believed, everything I had trusted, crumbling to dust. Explain what? I managed to say. Explain how you betrayed me too? No, Michael said quickly, dropping to his knees in front of me. No, Mom, it is not like that. I did not betray you. I would never. Then what is Daniel talking about? Agent Collins demanded, her voice sharp. What about the life insurance beneficiary? Michael looked at the floor, shame radiating from every part of him. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet, I had to lean forward to hear. 3 months before Dad died, he changed the beneficiary on his life insurance policy. He removed your name and put mine instead. The words hit me like a physical blow. Richard, my husband, the man who had promised to take care of me forever. He had cut me out of his own life insurance. Why? I whispered. Why would he do that? Michael's tears fell onto the carpet. Because of Daniel. Dad knew. He had figured out what Daniel was doing. The gambling, the debts, the fraud. Dad did not tell you because he did not want to break your heart, but he knew that if he died and left everything to you, Daniel would find a way to take it. So Dad changed the beneficiary to me. He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I would protect you. I would make sure you were taken care of. I stared at him, trying to process this. Richard knew? He knew Daniel was stealing? He found out about 6 months before he died. He hired a private investigator. He discovered that Daniel had been embezzling from his firm, that he owed money to dangerous people. Dad confronted Daniel, told him to get help or he would turn him in to the authorities. And Daniel refused, I said, understanding dawning. Michael nodded. Daniel told Dad to mind his own business, said he had everything under control. But Dad knew better. He started making changes, quietly. He moved money into accounts Daniel could not access. He updated his will. He changed the life insurance beneficiary. He was building a wall to protect you from Daniel. But he never told me, I said, pain lacing every word. He was going to. He just needed time to figure out how. He did not want to destroy your relationship with Daniel. He thought maybe, if he gave Daniel enough space, enough consequences, he would change, would get help. But then Dad died and you inherited everything, I finished. Yes, the life insurance, $500,000. It came to me instead of you. I felt hollow, empty. So Daniel was right. I did trust the wrong son. No! Michael grabbed my hands, his eyes desperate. Mom, please listen. I never touched that money. Not one penny. It is sitting in an account in my name, but I was holding it for you, all of it. I was waiting until the legal issues with Daniel were resolved, until I knew you were safe. Agent Collins can verify this. She has seen the bank records. I looked at Agent Collins. She nodded. It is true, Mrs. Reed. Michael has not withdrawn or spent any of the insurance money. When he came to us 3 weeks ago with evidence of Daniel's crimes, he also provided full financial disclosure. Everything checked out. He has been protecting those funds for you. But why not just tell me? I asked Michael. Why keep it secret? Michael's voice cracked. Because I was terrified. Dad made me promise not to tell you about Daniel, not to break your heart. And after Dad died, I saw how much pain you were in. How could I add to that? How could I tell you that your husband had been keeping secrets? That your oldest son was a criminal? I thought if I just handled it quietly, if I just protected you without you having to know all the ugly details, it would be better. But I deserve to know the truth, I said. I know that now. And I am so sorry, Mom. I was trying to honor Dad's wishes, trying to protect you. But I see now that I should have trusted you with the truth. You are stronger than both Dad and I gave you credit for. I looked at my younger son, kneeling before me with tears streaming down his face. I thought about everything he had done, coming to the FBI, warning me on the plane, saving my life, protecting the money that was rightfully mine. He had made mistakes, yes, kept secrets, but his heart had been in the right place. Unlike Daniel, I reached out and touched Michael's face, wiping away his tears. You should have told me, but I understand why you did not. And Michael, I need you to hear this. You did the right thing. You saved my life. You honored your father's wishes. You protected me when I could not protect myself. I was so scared, he sobbed. When I found out about the plane, when I realized what Daniel had planned, I thought I was going to lose you. I could not let that happen. I could not fail Dad again. You did not fail anyone, I said firmly. You are the son every mother dreams of having. You are brave and honest and good. From the sofa, Daniel made a disgusted sound. How touching. The golden child gets praised while I get handcuffs, just like always. I turned to look at him, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something other than grief. I felt clarity. You are right, Daniel, I said. It is just like always, because Michael has always been kind, always been truthful, always put others before himself. Those are the qualities I raised both of you to have. Michael chose to embrace them. You chose to reject them. That is not my failure. That is yours. Daniel's face twisted with rage. You never loved me the way you loved him. I loved you both equally, I said. But love is not enough to change someone who does not want to be changed. I see that now. I spent years making excuses for you, believing your lies, trusting your promises, but you never wanted to be better. You only wanted more. I wanted what I deserved. You deserved a mother who loved you, and you had that. Everything else you had to earn, and you chose to steal instead. Agent Collins stepped forward. Mrs. Reed, we need to transport the prisoner now. I nodded and stood up. I looked at Daniel one last time, searching for any trace of the boy I had loved, but he was gone. Perhaps he had never really existed. Perhaps I had only seen what I wanted to see. Goodbye, Daniel, I said softly. He turned his face away, refusing to look at me. The agents led him out of the house. I watched through the window as they put him in the back of a police car. The red and blue lights flickered across his face, and then he was gone, disappearing into the night like a stranger I had never known. Michael stood beside me, his hand in mine. What do we do now, Mom? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything that had happened settle into my bones. Richard was gone. Daniel was lost, but I was still here, still breathing, still alive, and I had one son left who loved me, who had fought for me, who had honored his father's memory by protecting mine. Now, I said, turning to face him, we rebuild, together. The days that followed felt like walking through fog. Everything was familiar, yet strange. My house, my street, my life, all of it looked the same on the surface, but underneath, everything had changed. Michael stayed with me. He slept in his old bedroom and made breakfast every morning, just like he had done in the week after Richard died. But this time felt different. This time, we talked, really talked, about things we had never spoken of before. 3 days after Daniel's arrest, I finally asked the question that had been haunting me. Did your father know he was dying? Michael looked up from his coffee, surprised. What do you mean? The life insurance change, the will, moving money around. Richard did all of that in the months before he died. Did he know something was wrong with his heart? Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. He had been having chest pains for about a year. He went to the doctor without telling you. They found blockages, severe ones. The doctor recommended surgery, but Dad refused. I felt the air leave my lungs. He refused? Why? Because the surgery was expensive, and the recovery would have taken months. He would not have been able to work. He said he could not afford to stop working, not with Daniel's debts and not knowing what would happen. So he managed it with medication and hoped for the best. He chose to die rather than burden us, I whispered. He chose to protect you the only way he knew how, Michael corrected gently, by working until the end, by making sure you would have something left after he was gone. I closed my eyes, seeing Richard in a new light, my quiet, careful husband, always thinking ahead, always sacrificing, even his own health. He should have told me, I said. We could have found another way. We could have fought together. I know. But that was not who Dad was. He carried burdens alone. He thought that was what being a man, being a father, being a husband meant, taking care of everything so you did not have to worry. And it killed him. Yes, it killed him. We sat in silence, the weight of Richard's choices settling around us like snow. Later that afternoon, Agent Collins came to the house with updates. She sat at the same kitchen table where I had shared thousands of meals with my family, and she told me things I needed to know but did not want to hear. Daniel has been cooperating with investigators, she said. Not out of remorse, but to reduce his sentence. He has given us names, the people he owed money to, the criminals he hired for the plane, the clients he defrauded. It is a long list. Will any of them come after me? I asked. For revenge? No. These people are businessmen in their own twisted way. With Daniel in custody and the money gone, they have no reason to pursue you. You are safe, Mrs. Reed. Safe. The word felt strange. I had spent my whole life feeling safe in Richard's arms, in my home, in my family, and it had all been an illusion. What will happen to Daniel? I asked. Agent Collins folded her hands on the table. He is facing multiple federal charges. Conspiracy to commit murder carries a life sentence. Add in the fraud, the forgery, the money laundering. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. There is no possibility of parole. Life in prison. My son would die behind bars. I should have felt relief, justice, but all I felt was a deep, aching sadness for the boy he could have been, the man he should have become. Mrs. Reed, Agent Collins said gently, there is something else you should know. In his statement, Daniel talked about his childhood, about feeling unloved, overlooked. He has built an entire narrative in his mind where you and your husband favored Michael over him. That is not true, I said immediately. I know. Michael knows. Even Daniel deep down probably knows, but he has convinced himself of this story because it absolves him of responsibility. If he was the victim, then everything he did was justified. I thought about the little boy Daniel had been. Serious, intense, always striving for approval. I had loved him fiercely, but had I shown it enough? Had I told him often enough that he was enough, exactly as he was? Did I fail him? I asked. Agent Collins looked at me with kind, knowing eyes. Mrs. Reed, I have worked hundreds of cases involving family violence and betrayal, and I can tell you this with certainty. You did not create Daniel's choices. People are not simple equations. You cannot add love, plus discipline, plus attention, and get a guaranteed result. Daniel had the same upbringing as Michael, the same parents, the same opportunities. He chose a different path. That is on him, not you. But I should have seen the signs, the gambling, the debts. I should have known. He hid it well. That is what addicts and criminals do. They lie. They manipulate. They show you only what they want you to see. You are not a detective, Mrs. Reed. You are a mother, and mothers want to believe the best about their children. That is not a weakness. That is love. I let her words sink in, feeling some of the weight lift from my chest. Not all of it. Perhaps the guilt would never fully leave, but enough that I could breathe again. Michael spoke up then, his voice steady. Mom, there is something I need to tell you. Something Dad made me promise, but I think you need to hear it now. I looked at him, bracing myself for another revelation. Before Dad died, he wrote you a letter. He gave it to me and told me to give it to you only if something happened to him. I have been carrying it with me for 3 months. I was waiting for the right time. I think that time is now. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope, cream-colored, sealed. My name written on the front in Richard's careful handwriting. My hands shook as I took it from him. I stared at the envelope, afraid of what it might contain. More secrets? More pain? But I needed to know. Needed to hear Richard's voice one more time, even if only through ink on paper. I opened the envelope carefully and pulled out 2 pages, covered front and back with Richard's familiar script. My dearest Martha, it began. And as I read, tears streaming down my face, I finally understood. Richard had known he was dying. He had known about Daniel, and he had spent his final months trying to protect me from both truths. The letter explained everything. His fear that Daniel would manipulate me if I knew too much. His hope that Daniel might still change. His trust in Michael to do what was right. And his love for me, constant and unwavering, even as he carried burdens too heavy for one man to bear. I am sorry I could not be braver, he wrote near the end. I am sorry I could not trust you with the whole truth. You deserved a partner who walked beside you, not a protector who walked ahead, blocking your view. If I could do it over, I would choose honesty. I would choose us, together, facing everything side by side. Forgive me, my love, and know that every choice I made, right or wrong, came from a heart that loved you more than life itself. I pressed the letter to my chest and wept. For Richard, for Daniel, for the family we had been and the family we would never be again, but also for something else, something unexpected, for freedom, because now I knew the truth, all of it, and the truth, painful as it was, had set me free from the prison of not knowing, free from the weight of unanswered questions, free to finally, truly begin to heal. Michael held me while I cried, and Agent Collins quietly slipped out, giving us privacy. When the tears finally stopped, I looked at my son, my good, loyal, honest son, and I made a decision. We are going to be all right, I said. You and I. We are going to take this broken mess and build something new, something honest, something true. How? Michael asked. By learning from their mistakes, Richard's and Daniel's, by choosing transparency over protection, by choosing truth over comfort, and by remembering that love without honesty is just another kind of prison. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Outside the window, the sun was setting, the same sun that had risen and set on my life for 62 years. But somehow the light looked different now. Clearer, sharper, real. Justice had been served. Daniel would face consequences for his actions. The truth had come to light. But more than that, I had survived. And in surviving, I had learned something precious. That even when the people you love most betray you, even when your world crumbles to dust, you can choose to rise. You can choose to rebuild. You can choose to live. And I was choosing life. 6 months have passed since that night on the plane. 6 months since I learned that the son I raised wanted me dead. 6 months since I read Richard's final letter and understood the weight he carried in silence. People ask me how I am doing. They expect me to say I am fine, that I have moved on. That time has healed all wounds, but the truth is more complicated than that. And I have learned that complicated truths are the only ones worth telling. I am not fine, but I am better. I am healing, slowly, the way a bone heals after it has been broken. It takes time. It aches when the weather changes, but it grows stronger at the fracture point. Michael and I sold the house. Too many ghosts lived in those rooms. Too many memories that had been rewritten by Daniel's betrayal and Richard's secrets. We found a smaller place together, a cottage near the water where the light is clear and the air smells like salt and possibility. The life insurance money sits in an account with both our names on it. Full transparency, full trust. Michael insisted, and I agreed. We are learning to build something new. A relationship based not on protection and secrets, but on honesty and partnership. I have not spoken to Daniel since that night. He writes letters sometimes, long, rambling explanations about his childhood, his struggles, his reasons. I read the first few. Then I stopped, because I realized that no explanation would ever be enough. No apology would undo what he had been willing to do. I have forgiven him in my heart, not for his sake, but for mine. Because carrying anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I choose not to poison myself anymore. But forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. It does not mean pretending that what happened did not happen. It means releasing the need for revenge and choosing peace instead. Daniel will spend the rest of his life in prison. That is his consequence, his choice, his path. I cannot walk it for him. I cannot save him from himself. All I can do is live my own life with as much truth and grace as I can manage. I have started volunteering at a women's shelter. 3 times a week, I sit with women who have been betrayed by people they loved. I listen to their stories. I hold their hands. I tell them they are not alone, that survival is possible, that healing, though painful, is real. I do not tell them my story often. It is too raw, too personal. But sometimes when I see a woman struggling to forgive herself for not seeing the warning signs, I share pieces of it. I tell her that loving someone does not make you responsible for their choices, that trusting someone does not make you foolish, that mothers, wives, daughters, we are taught to see the best in people, and that is not a weakness. That is our strength. Last month, a young woman named Sarah came to the shelter. Her husband had stolen her savings and disappeared. She blamed herself, said she should have known, should have been smarter, should have protected herself better. I looked into her eyes and saw myself 6 months ago. You loved him, I told her. That is not a crime. That is not stupidity. That is courage. And yes, he betrayed that love. But his betrayal does not diminish your courage. It only reveals his cowardice. She cried in my arms, and in comforting her, I comforted the part of myself that still ached with questions and regrets. I think about Richard often. I have stopped being angry at him for keeping secrets. I understand now that he was doing what he thought was right, what his generation, his upbringing, his sense of duty told him was right. He was not perfect, but he loved me. And sometimes, imperfect love is all we get in this messy, complicated world. I visit his grave every Sunday. I bring fresh flowers and tell him about my week, about Michael, about the women at the shelter, about the life I am building from the ashes of the one we shared. I like to think he is proud of me, proud that I survived, proud that I chose to keep living, keep loving, keep trusting, even after everything. Michael is thriving. He has started therapy to process the trauma of what happened. He has also started dating someone, a kind, gentle woman named Claire who knows the whole story and loves him anyway. They are taking it slow, building a foundation of honesty, and I am hopeful that he will not repeat the mistakes of his father, that he will choose partnership over protection, truth over comfort. As for me, I am learning to live alone without being lonely, to find joy in small things, the way morning light filters through my kitchen window, the sound of waves at night, the warmth of tea in my hands, the satisfaction of helping someone find their strength. I am 63 years old now. I have lived through betrayal, grief, and the kind of pain that breaks people. But I did not break. I bent. I cracked. But I did not shatter. And there is power in that. Power in survival. Power in choosing to rise, even when staying down would be easier. If you are listening to my story and you see yourself in it, I want you to know something. You are stronger than you think. The people who betray you do not define you. The pain you endure does not diminish you. You are more than what was done to you. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Do not silence that inner voice that warns you of danger. Do not make excuses for people who hurt you. And do not blame yourself for loving them. Love is never the mistake. What people choose to do with that love, that is on them. I cannot say that everything happens for a reason. I do not believe that. Some things just happen. Random, cruel, senseless. But I do believe we get to choose what we do with what happens to us. We get to choose whether we let it destroy us or define us. I am choosing to let it define me as a survivor, as someone who faced the worst and came out the other side, not unscathed, not unchanged, but alive and awake and free. My name is Martha Reed. I am 63 years old. I survived my son's attempt to kill me. And if my story helps even one person open their eyes, trust their instincts, or find the courage to walk away from danger, then every moment of pain was worth it. Because we are all connected in our suffering, and we are all capable of healing, together. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who is trapped in silence or doubt or fear, please share this story with them. Sometimes, the truth we need to hear comes from a stranger's voice, a voice that says, "You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are a survivor, and your story is not over yet."